Imagine being awakened in the middle of the night by your son. He's 6 years old, but his eyes aren't those of a child. They're the eyes of a man who's seen too much. He cries. He trembles. And he whispers to you, "Mom, I was there. I saw Jesus die. This isn't fiction. It really happened." And the Vatican couldn't ignore it. In the working-class neighborhood of San Juan de Dios, in Leon, among pastel-colored houses and old cobblestone streets that smell of burning wood and spiced coffee, lived the Herrera family. Joaquin, an honest mechanic at a Ford dealership. Speranza, a devoted parish secretary. And their son, Matteo. A simple house, built of mud bricks painted sky blue. The walls spoke of a humble but serene life, black and white photographs of her grandparents, hand-carved crucifixes, and the aroma of mole poblano wafting from the kitchen. Matteo, born on an April afternoon in 2018, grew up like any other Mexican child, chasing chickens, watching cartoons, playing with toy cars. And yet, in his eyes, there was an ancient shadow. A deep, inexplicable gaze that unsettled anyone who looked at it too long. On the morning of September 14, 2024, the day of the exaltation of the Holy Cross, the family attended Mass at the parish of San Sebastian. At the end of the celebration, as the faithful headed for the exit, Matteo stopped. His gaze fixed on the crucifix carved on the high altar. His small fingers slipped from his mother's. His lips began to tremble. Tears streamed down his face. "Mom, I was there. I saw him when he died." There were soldiers with shining helmets. People were shouting evil things, they were exalted. Then the sky turned black, like before a storm. Joaquin, who had been chatting with Aurelio about the prices of spare parts, approached nervously. The scent of incense filled the air, but it mingled with the cold sweat rolling down his forehead when he heard his son's words. "Matteo, come here," he said, picking him up. "Where did you see these things? In a movie? Did your teacher tell you about them at school or in Sunday school?" But Matteo shook his head, with that stubbornness typical of children when they know something with absolute certainty. "No, Dad. I was there. Standing there. I couldn't leave. I was petrified with fear." On the way home, walking through the streets of Leon's historic center, Speranza and Joaquin exchanged worried glances. In their hearts, uneasiness grew like a shadow. Once home, Speranza began preparing mole poblano for Sunday lunch. The scent of chili chocolate spread everywhere, while Matteo played with toy cars in the courtyard, humming innocent songs. At lunch, however, the unexpected happened. When his father crossed himself to bless the food, Matthew stood up in his chair and, in a solemn voice, recited, "Abba, Heavenly Father, bless this food, as you blessed the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. May they be enough for everyone, as they were enough for the 5,000. His voice, so solemn in a 6-year-old, chilled his parents' blood. Joaquin dropped the spoon into the plate. "Where did you learn that prayer?" he asked. Matteo looked at him intently. His black eyes seemed to hold ancient secrets. "I've always known it, Dad. Even before I was here with you and Mom. That prayer didn't exist in the catechism books. Not even the priests had ever heard it." In the weeks that followed, Joaquin continued his routine, wake up at 6 a.m. when the rooster crowed, breakfast, and work in the workshop amidst the smell of oil. Speranza continued at the parish, helping Father Miguel and organizing masses. But neither of them could concentrate. Every time they looked at Matteo, they remembered those impossible words. And the signs continued to accumulate, like clouds before a storm. Matteo refused to eat pork. "You shouldn't," he said firmly. "My people don't eat that stuff." "What people, my love?" Speranza asked. And he replied casually, "Those who followed the Master." One afternoon, while Speranza was sweeping the yard, Matteo approached with a handful of earth in his hands. "Mom," he said seriously. "The earth of Jerusalem smells different when it rains." Speranza was petrified. The broom fell from her hand. How do you know? She managed to ask in a trembling voice. The child smiled nostalgically. Because I've been there, Mom. I lived in those streets, when I was growing up, before I came here with you. Every day, Speranza hoped it was just a dream, a child's game. But every day something happened, and each time the evidence became more supernatural. Some time passed since the episode in church. One morning, Matteo appeared at the kitchen door with that look Speranza had come to fear, an adult's gaze trapped in a child's body. Mom, he said, climbing into his little green chair, do you know what happened to Bartimaeus after he regained his sight? Speranza felt her heart race. Bartimaeus? That name, so precise. Who is Bartimaeus, my darling? She asked, feigning calm. Matteo answered with disarming ease. He was a blind man who used to sit along the road to Jericho. Always there, begging. He wore a torn brown tunic that stank of sweat and dust. Jochen, ready to leave for work, stopped suddenly. The details his son was describing couldn't be found in any children's catechism. Matthew continued, when the master passed by with us, Bartimaeus began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. The people tried to silence him, but he shouted even louder. Then the master stopped and said to Peter, bring him here. Hope sat down, unable to bear the weight of her own emotions. And then, what happened? She asked in a faint voice. Bartimaeus took off his cloak, the only thing he owned, and ran toward us, stumbling because he couldn't see. When the master touched his eyes, Bartimaeus cried. It was the first time he had seen the blue sky. Matteo's face lit up with memory. Jochen, his hands shaking, asked, Matteo, where did you hear this detailed story? The answer was heartbreaking. I was there, Dad. I was carrying the bag with the loaves. I saw Bartimaeus' eyes turn blue. That afternoon, Speranza couldn't concentrate on her parish work. Those words weren't those of a child. They were the words of someone who had lived. She decided to investigate. She went to the seminary library, where Father Miguel had granted her access to theological texts usually read only by seminarians. Leafing through the books, she found Bartimaeus mentioned in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10. But what left her breathless was a comment in an academic edition. According to some apocryphal traditions, Bartimaeus followed Jesus after his healing, becoming one of the minor disciples charged with carrying supplies. How could Matteo know? These were details that didn't appear in any catechism or popular text, but only in specialized studies. He returned home at sunset. The aroma of freshly made tortillas mingled with the smoke from the bonfires of dry leaves. He saw Jochen sitting under the orange tree, watching Matteo play with his toy cars. Her husband's expression was somewhere between amazement and fear. Matteo told me something else today, he said in a low voice. Jochen had returned from work earlier than usual. As he took off his boots, Matteo approached him and said casually, Dad, did you know that when they crucified someone, they first gave him wine mixed with gall to reduce the pain? But the master wouldn't drink it. He said he had to feel everything, to save us. Jochen froze. And how do you know, son? Matteo replied in a calm but chilling voice, I was there when they offered it to him. I saw it with my own eyes. Then he added, describing with horrifying precision, the sound of the nails going through wood and flesh was terrible. It was like hammering a nail into a wet board, Dad, but much louder. Then a silence fell. A silence that hurt the ears. There was a soldier. His name was Marco. He had a scar on his forehead and was always chewing something. He was the one who drew lots for the master's tunic. I know this because the other soldiers were shouting, Marco, it's your turn to nail the feet. That night, neither Hope nor Jochen could sleep. They pondered, searching for a logical explanation. They had never seen films about the crucifixion, nor had they spoken of Roman soldiers in catechism, much less given names. Their thoughts were becoming deafening. It was clear they needed help. October 25, 2024, arrived with a bone-chilling chill. That night, Speranza awoke with a start. She heard furtive footsteps in the hallway. Her heart pounding, she followed the noise to the living room. There she found Matteo, standing before the image of the Sacred Heart hanging on the wall. The child was whispering incomprehensibly, in a language she didn't recognize. "Matteo, what are you doing awake, my darling?" she asked, slowly approaching. The child turned around, his cheeks streaked with tears, his gaze filled with pain. "I was talking to the Master, Mom. He was sad. He told me that people will come soon, who will say I'm crazy." It seemed like a prophecy. That same morning, someone knocked on the door. It was Donna Soledad Vasquez, Father Miguel's sister and Mateo's teacher. A stern, 60-year-old woman with gray hair tied in a bun and dressed as if time had stood still, a dark sweater and a long, ankle-length skirt. "Good morning, Speranza. Can we talk?" she said, entering the living room. They sat down. The teacher began bluntly, "I've heard some very disturbing rumors about Matteo. The boy says he knew Jesus." "Madam, that's blasphemous. He crossed himself 3 times, as if to protect himself." Speranza bit her lip. "What if he wasn't making it up?" she whispered. The teacher's expression hardened. "Don't be silly. These are things of the devil. My brother, Father Miguel, is worried. Maybe it would be better to take the boy to a psychologist, or an exorcist." Speranza's voice became firm. "Matteo isn't possessed. What he's saying makes sense. He knows details he couldn't make up." If this story has intrigued you, follow us. In a few days we will publish the second part. Subscribe to the channel and give a like, we are waiting for you.